you guys were not. You were in. Actually, you were in our preseason.
I was in Portland as well.
I want to cover playoff hockey in Vancouver. I want the fans to enjoy and experience playoff hockey in Vancouver. I want the Canucks to win a Stanley Cup for this city. And looking at Raptors Twitter right now, a fade for Cade. I feel like a lot of them would love to see him there. I mean, I'm not advocating for that, but I mean, I know that's big on Raptors Twitter minds these days.
LA gave one out to Jared Goff, and they've already moved on. Correct. They didn't think that could work for them.
Okay, sports fans, it's time for the Unnamed Sports Show. Here's your host, Joshua Griffith.
Hello and welcome. And as you just heard from the amazing voice of Don Andrews, I am Joshua Griffith, your host here on the Unnamed Sports Show. This is the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. Thursday, June 3rd, and this is episode 53 of the show today. Going to be a bit of off the mainstream path as I focus on a legend in the British Columbia high school football coaching ranks today. So I'll be joined by somebody a lot of people know from his work with TSN as well, covering the Canucks, BC Lions, and more. However, today we are going to be going over something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that will be his coaching time with New Westminster. So the one and only Farhan Lalji will join me in just a couple minutes, and we're going to go over his illustrious coaching career. But of course, before we get into that, we need to do some housekeeping. So if you haven't already, hit that like button down below, subscribe to the Sports Talk Line channel, and comment along. Let me know what you think. So now that we have all that stuff out of the way, let's get to this conversation with Farhan Lalji. All right, so I'm so thrilled to be joined by my next guest for so many reasons. Former head coach of the New Westminster Hyacks, and of course, reporter for TSN, Farhan Lalji. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Joshua, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we're getting down there in the numbers for COVID and up in the vaccinations, but I still like to start my shows by asking my guests how they're doing and how you and your family been during these times.
I've been great, to be honest. I've got my first vaccine done. I don't want to say I've enjoyed COVID, but I have spent a lot more time with my family. I think that's been a real positive, a real blessing. Probably about a month before COVID started, I began running regularly, and COVID certainly made that easier because of the amount of home time. So, I've probably committed more to my fitness and health in the last 15 months than I have in the last 20 years. So that's been a blessing too. And, I'm generally a win-win person. So I try to find the positive in all situations. So it could have been a lot worse for me. I didn't lose my job. My wife didn't lose hers. So, my kids have maintained a level of healthy activity. So it's been as good as it can be.
Well, that's good to hear. It's always good to hear positives from all of this. I mean, and it's good to take the positives from it. So I'm gonna start this off with the same way that Jay Janauer did from Global TV BC with this chat on Sunday with you by thanking you for all of your contributions to BC high school football in the past 18 years, to even myself without me actually knowing it. I was a little bit saddened to hear the news, obviously, but was inspired to give you a small sliver of kind of what you've done in your coaching time with a piece I wrote. I was just wanting to start with, if you could comment on your time at Burnaby Central after your playing career, just how you got into coaching.
Well, first of all, thanks for the story and having me on and all of those things, and just kind of recognizing not necessarily myself particularly, but just the fact that, coaches have an important role. And for me, I've found it to be very rewarding. I graduated from Burnaby Central in 1986. So my last season playing high school football was 85. And then in 1987, I began coaching at Burnaby Central, which, as you mentioned, is my alma mater. And Alex Reid was the head coach at the time. And I just wasn't ready to have him stop being an influence in my life. He was such a good person and a decent person. And I just always really, really liked him. And so I just, more so as much as I loved the game, I loved him, and I just wanted to be around him more. So that was the main reason why I got involved. And then it just kind of kept on from there. And then, he left around 98, and then I continued to coach there until 2000, and then kind of decided that my time was done there. And then I moved on, and and I had a great experience there just, because it was my school. But then I moved on and spent a couple of years at Vancouver College. And from there, I decided I wanted to be a head coach and kind of have a bigger input and bigger influence. And, I was in my mid 30s. I had the opportunity when Alex Reid left the program at Burnaby Central to be the head coach at that time, but I just didn't think that made sense for me. And then a few years later, when the New West opportunity came open, it was great. My wife and myself, she wasn't my wife at the time, but, we had a number of places that reached out and said, hey, we want you to come and either take over our program or start a new program here. We looked at starting one at Kitts High School. And when we went to New West, myself and Andrew McKechnie, who was still a coach at this time and was a coach with me back then, when we left the building and saw the facility, we thought this is probably where we should be. And it turned into a really good situation and a really good decision. And, everything has kind of taken off from there.
So obviously, you started the program in 2003. What were the early years like trying to establish a football program in Vancouver, which already had a lot of well-established football programs? Like you mentioned, you just came from Vancouver College, very well-established private school. What was that like for you?
Well, it was really exciting. There was some nervous moments because if you took over another program, you don't have to deal with the equipment and basic stuff, uniforms and those types of things. But ultimately, some of that was the fun stuff, just kind of getting new stuff right at the beginning and designing a uniform right at the beginning. But, as much as anything is that when we came in, we had a vision of trying to create a culture and trying to create a tradition. And I think the city of New West was set up for that because New West is a small town disguised as a suburb. I've said that many times, right? There's a real small town mentality. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, but it's worked for groups like the New West Salmon Bellies, and we thought that we could build something similar, and I think we have. So, the city really kind of took us in and bought into the vision, and and that's really all it was. So it was exciting to kind of come in with an idea and turn it into something real and have it even exceed your expectations, right? So, it was never going to be perfect, but it was good. Even the first year we were able to get to 500 and make the playoffs. And in the second year, we had like this unbelievable playoff win, which was a really memorable evening. Probably honestly, even including the Subway Bowl, this win in 2004 against Bolinas was probably my favorite football game of all time, just because of how it was played and how it ended. And then, it just kind of went up and down. And then we got to a point in, 2007 to 2009, where we had some great teams and we dropped a little bit. And then in 2014, it got good again. And, we kind of built until we were able to win a championship. So, if you'd asked me then, I probably believed so much in my own abilities and that of the coaches I had that I thought we'd win a championship before that. People said to me, wow, it's amazing how fast you did it in 17. And I'm like, well, I don't feel that way. I wish we would have won before. So it's been good. And, certainly the time I've spent on the board of directors of BC High School football, which goes back to my Burnaby Central days, that began in 1996. That's also been really rewarding to deal with a bunch of like-minded individuals. And overall, I don't have a lot of complaints. I've had buy-in at every level from the beginning, from my family at home to the school, the athletic director, the phys ed department, the principals. In the early days, we had great superintendents and trustees, and it's been working out really well.
So a couple things on that. Anytime that you beat Bolinas, obviously as a John Barsby former player, I love that to hear that. So yeah. And then to just, the stuff with BC high school football and just kind of expanding it and adding to it and creating such a diverse, I guess, program across British Columbia. Because I know, speaking to some of the people for my article that I was doing, they mentioned you as somebody who BC high school football wouldn't be where it is today without your influence.
Well, that's nice of them to say. I think we all have our strengths. And certainly I've got a media background and my strength is people skills and promotional skills and things like that, which I've kind of made the forefront of what I've done at New West, right? Because, my goal there was to build a great team, and we were able to do that. And then I kind of did what I did best and I allowed them to do what they did best. Now, certainly I love the football and I love the strategy and all of that, but I also thought where I could separate myself was as a builder. And I took that over to BC high school football because I kind of felt that, it's great to build a program, but what good is it if the entity that they're a part of isn't necessarily great and promoted well and all of those types of things. So I really thought that there was room there for us to take the provincial championships to a new level and get a title sponsor and have a game of the week package and put games on television and have a signature event like our provincial awards banquet. So all of those types of things, those are kind of really in my wheelhouse. So we were able to put those in years ago. And, even that was tradition, because when we first started, like the day I signed the Subway Bowl deal with Subway, the very first one, you want to know what day that was? That was 9/11. Like the attacks on the World Trade Center happened that morning, and that afternoon I was on my way in to Eye Advertising, which was the Subway agency, to finalize and sign that deal. Like that's how long ago that was. And at the time, it took a while to get people used to calling it that, right? Like in the beginning, they didn't have any allegiance to the sponsor. They just wanted to call it the championships. Now, you can't think of the championships without just calling it Subway Bowl.
The
right?
Subway Bowl, yeah.
And if a new sponsor came in, it would take them a while. Like it would take, 5-7 years before people would stop calling it Subway Bowl. For me, I still call GM Place instead of Rogers Center. You get used to it. So it takes a while to establish culture, and we were able to do that on a lot of levels. And I think organizationally and from a promotional standpoint, we became the envy of Canadian high school football for a long time with what we were doing here provincially. And, you had the George Oswalds and Rob Stevensons and Dennis Kellys of the world, doing so much on the football side to bring our game to the next level that, I felt, okay, this is where I can kind of separate myself and, stand on the shoulders of those great people and try to do something different that maybe isn't their strength, but is mine.
It's so fascinating to hear, because obviously I was so immersed in it, being an athlete, growing up in the 2000s and being involved with high school football. And yeah, it's the Subway Bowl. We refer to it as the Subway Bowl. Hey, are you watching so-and-so's in the Subway Bowl? Are you watching the Subway Bowl? So it's amazing what you've been able to do with that brand. So it kind of brings me to my next question about, you being in the media as well, because I put it on Twitter that we did actually used to chirp Rob Stevenson, my old coach. Hey, be nice if our coach worked for TSN.
Yeah.
We did have to run, but did you ever have any issues with kind of balancing your two roles?
Yeah, I think so. To be honest, I think in the beginning, it was just so hard to be in two places at once. And I felt like I had to do that. My role has morphed a lot since then, and it's become a little more streamlined at TSN that facilitated it. But in the beginning, I was constantly having to justify what I was doing and really burn the candle at both ends and work so much harder to make sure that I was doing the best job I could do on the television side, to make sure that no one ever thought that the football side was affecting that, right? But it really got to a point where my employers just said, you know what, this is what he's going to do, and there's nothing we can do about it. And we like what he's doing on the other side, so let's just let it go and support him, right? And in the beginning, I don't want to say that they weren't supportive, but I kind of felt like, I always felt like a rookie at TSN, and I always had to feel that I was trying to earn my keep that way, right? And it took a while before I felt like a veteran, for lack of a better expression. And so back then, when I really felt like a rookie, I constantly felt like I just, I was almost afraid, and don't let this affect that. And but by the end of it, I think the people that worked above me at TSN and worked with me at TSN really, really bought into what I was doing, and the fact that it was making a difference in the community. And quite frankly, it was helping their brand, because I was so invested and people saw me as being invested. And I think that looked good on TSN, to be quite frank, right? So I think they saw that. Then eventually it got to the point where I had so much more credibility on the football side that CFL people would start to talk to me differently, because they knew I understood the game and they knew I was giving to the game. So now all of a sudden I became a confidant for people around the league, and I had a different level of respect than just any other media around the league. So that also helped the TSN brand. And so eventually it kind of worked into a really good way, where the last couple of years, I've even got an analyst role at the network, which, I've never played or coached the game at the professional level, right? Or even at the major college level. So the fact that they've trusted me with that speaks to the fact that, there's a lot of respect around the country for what I've done. And I hope I never betray that respect.
So I'm joined by Farhan Lalji of TSN here on the Unnamed Sports Show. And I think some of the respect that you get is it's just what you're doing for your programs, building up contenders in 2014. I mean, you sent two players to NCAA, you won a provincial championship in 2017. You're doing big things to grow the game, and it's great to see that TSN is acknowledging that and on board and being like, okay, this is a guy that's really going to promote things.
Yeah, and they had some fun with it, right? I remember when we won the provincial championship. I mean, they put a ton of stuff on TV on TSN, on Sports Center, about how that game ended. And then the following year, Chris Cuthbert always used to introduce me in my first hit on every CFL game as head coach of the new Westminster Hyacks, right? And so we would joke that he was trying to build up my national recruiting base. And then we won the championship. So the next year I had the ring on, and they didn't tell me they were going to do it, but my first hit of a game that day, they ran the end of the championship and they showed me in the ring. And when we won the semifinal game to get to the Grey Cup. Won the semifinal to get to the Subway Bowl in 17. That Grey Cup weekend on the pregame show, they actually ran. They had Giulio Caravata film me, and so I didn't know I was being filmed. And we were all out one night, and then he was kind of keeping track of the score. And I said, "Don't tell me what's going on until the game ends. Like, I don't want to know until the game ends." And so when the game ended, he told me, and he had somebody else film me. And I was like, doing jumping jacks in the bar that we were at in Ottawa at the time. And then they showed that the next day on the Grey Cup pregame show. So, eventually they really had fun with it at the network. And even when I resigned, I had no idea, but Rod Smith, and he was directed by one of our senior producers to put a clip of it and just talk about it at the end of Sports Center. I didn't know till after the fact. And, so just all of that has meant a lot, that it's meant this much to TSN.
That's so cool to hear. And I'm sure that was like even mind blowing for you to find out all that stuff after and them doing that. And as someone just getting his foot into the industry, you can tell that everyone involved in this industry is really looking out for each other. And they're trying to keep close tabs on us, and they're looking out for the best of us. And something else too, that I wanted to mention, something that you did for me was that I didn't even know, that I just found out the other day. Like you said, what you found out was we came for a 7-on-7 tournament, and I think it was summer of 2005 over in Burnaby. And I found out the other day that you were instrumental in getting us a van for the 7-on-7 tournament. So we weren't stuck at the hotel. So we were able to kind of move around, and you just were like, nope, you guys need one, and that it's getting done. So that was really cool to hear. And I mean, just put another smile on my face while I was doing research and writing that article.
Yeah. We were trying to grow 7-on-7 back then. And, there was a time where we had the biggest 7-on-7 tournament, like really in the West, like not just Canada, but like in the United States, because 7-on-7 hadn't taken off yet. And, I've always said, and Newest is an example of that, I don't always have good ideas, but I never have small ideas. So even when we built that 7-on-7 tournament, I thought, okay, well, what else can we do to make coaches want to come and grow this thing here? I remember we went to Redmond, Washington, and I knew the coach of Redmond, Washington. We went down there to play in a 4-team tournament. And when I came back, in my mind, I thought, okay, we can do this and make it even bigger and have American teams and have corporate sponsorships. And like by the end of that trip, I had already framed out the blueprint for a 32-team 7-on-7 tournament. So, if we need hotels, let's have a tournament hotel. We need vehicles, let's get some vehicles. Let's have a coaches golf tournament, because it was a 2-day tournament. So the night of the first day, let's do a 9-hole coaches golf tournament, just so they can come and have some drinks and play some golf and just want to come back. Right. So it was just always like that. I've just kind of thought in those terms, even with our program, I never wanted to build the best program in Canada. And I'm not suggesting we ever were that. I wanted to build an American program, right? Like just a program that was fully comprehensive and embedded itself in the community and had multiple elements and people involved from all ends. So, I certainly think we were able to do that. And, the 7-on-7 tournament was really big. And I still have people from Washington State that eventually played in the NFL that played in that tournament. I mean, there was a time where we had like 10 Division I guys at that tournament every year. And the championships got so competitive, and, people still talk about that as the OG of 7-on-7 tournaments. You've got Pylon and all of these things that are happening now. The NFL is running events. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a big 7-on-7. But when we had that thing going, we were the only one, and we were a destination event for all of Washington.
It was so cool. I remember showing up to it and going, I'm sorry, we're playing against all of these people. I don't remember how many American teams were. I think there was a couple.
About half and half. We got to a point where we had like 16 American teams and 16 BC teams.
And I was looking at it, I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Because 5, 11 165-pound wide receiver that, okay, I got this. No, I did not. I did not have this.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. Farhan, I got a couple more minutes with you because I know you're a busy guy. I played for 4 years. I only made it as far as the semifinals. I went back, coached for a couple of years. I was lucky enough to make a Subway Bowl. We lost to NDSS, unfortunately. But I know that you said you might not be done with coaching. What did it mean to you to just get into to just, I guess, do what you did for all the kids over all those years?
It meant a lot. It's been rewarding. I've built a ton of relationships as a result. And those are the things you take with you, right? You take the memories and you take the relationships. And regardless of what happens down the road with, my career with football in, at New West or BC, whatever, like no one can ever take those things away from me. And, it felt a lot like winning the championship. I'll be honest. When we won the title in 2017, my phone blew up and people that I hadn't heard from in so many years took the time to reach out and say, thank you. And I'm so happy for you that, that you guys won it. And it feels like I won it and I didn't win it back then. And, those things meant a lot. And then this time around, when all of this stuff happened, I got the same type of response, on social media, but also on email and text, and people felt really happy for me. I hadn't really meant to announce it as such. It didn't really, that wasn't the intent. I'm working with a business development person and they said, hey, you need some more followers on Instagram. You've got a lot on Twitter. So, try to drive some people. And I said, okay, well, it was my last practice. I just wanted to put some pictures up and drive some people. And in my mind, I didn't view it as an announcement, and now the blog I wrote, I'd written 3 weeks ago. And so when it all blew up and got taken as an announcement, I wasn't really prepared for that. And then, so the outpouring on social media was so positive and kind, and on email and text, the hundreds that reached out that way was kind too, but people started to worry and they said, are you healthy? Are you okay? Is that why you're stepping away? Or did you have a falling out with somebody? Is that why you're stepping away? So I thought I better just post this blog now and get it out of the way so that people don't think that, right? And so I put that out, and then that got 8,000 views in a few hours. And so the response was really overwhelming. It was really rewarding. I've had, my first quarterback who lives in Germany now and played for me in 2003 has reached out. My first trainers who trained in 03 and 04, they reached out, just people that go so far back. I was running the field the other day and a guy was coaching soccer. And as I was running, he pulled his mask off and said, do you remember me? I played for you in 2003. And of course I remembered him. And, and he said that I'm coaching these little kids in soccer because of you. And I said, you understand that you are the same age now that I was when I coached you. And it took him a while to process that. And, so just all of those types of messages and just people wanting to reconnect, that's kind of what it's all about. Because one thing I learned is that, there are kids that just will never figure it out while they're with you in high school. And you feel like you failed. But eventually they take the messages you taught them and they figure it out later. They figure it out in their successful businesses with their own families and kids. And then you realize that, the championships aren't important. The relationships and the lessons are so much more important. And it's pretty awesome to know that I had a small piece in anyone's life, to make it better. I don't take that lightly. I don't take it for granted. It means a lot.
I think that's why I was so driven to write that piece about you, because I've seen firsthand the benefits that playing in high school football and being a part of these programs, in a general thing, have done to people. Like you said, they're, homeowners, business owners, families, doing the right things for our communities. And I know that
here's the other thing. Don't let someone tell you that all sports do that, because football is different and high school football is different. And any high level hockey player who tells you it's not has never experienced it. Because when you come into a football setting and the finances get stripped away, because I'm going through it with my son in hockey. The kids with money play hockey, and I don't necessarily have money, so we're grinding away to make that work, right? For him to continue to play at a high level. That's not the case in football. And then in football, you have 30 and 40 kids on a team. So now you've got just such a wide economic spectrum, right? Like people who have nothing, people who have a lot, and you bring them all together. People from so many ethnic backgrounds, you bring them all together, whereas other sports may have cultural biases that they may not be willing to admit, but it's clear that they're there and you just have to watch, right? To know. Whereas football, none of that happens. You can also join football late. My son started playing hockey when he was 4. If he had joined hockey when he was 8, forget about it. You're going to suck forever. Yeah. It's just the way it goes. But in football, that doesn't happen. You can join in grade 10, 11, 12 and still have success. football is different than the other sports. And when you do it and you're associating it with your school and you're part of a good program, it is different than any other sport. And for anybody to tell you it's not, they didn't play. Bottom line. So I encourage every administrator and parent and volunteer, like, get behind a program because it'll make such a difference for so many kids.
I absolutely love that you mentioned that because I played rec hockey for 2 years and I stopped because I grew out of my equipment and my parents were like, we don't have thousands of dollars to shell out for equipment. With football, I showed up with my paracletes and the programs were able to do the rest for me. And I am where I am today, 100%, thanks to Rob Stevenson, the John Barsby program, BC high school football, and everything you guys have done. I know you got to go really quickly, but there's one more really important thing that I want to touch on. I saw yesterday you guys are doing a thing for Men's Health Foundation to spotlight men's mental health. And I was just wondering if you could maybe give me like 60 seconds about that.
Yeah, I think it's a really important topic. You know, my good friend TC Carling runs the foundation and asked me to be involved. And, you know, I was really happy to do that. And I think it's important. You know, I think that men go through a lot of stresses. You know, new society may be changing that because things get balanced out. But if you grew up a certain way, you can't help but take on, you know, how your parents felt about it and what the role of a male is in a home. And you know, you want to make sure that you're able to live up to all the responsibilities that you believe are required to you and be able to do that in a reasonable way. And people don't always have a sense of their mental health. Now, look, as a high school football coach, I also believe it's really important to teach resiliency first, right? And I think that matters because, you know, you want people to experience what it's like to be tough because no matter what, you know, whether you have mental health or not, or whether it's clinically diagnosed or not, you still are going to have tough times and that's not going to change. So I think it's important to build resiliency. But then after that, I think it's really important to recognize that not everybody has the coping skills to deal with it in the same light. Right. And it's you hear real stories that make a difference, you know, whether it's Rick Rippon in the NHL and so many others that have to go through it. You know, my mentor on the television side is Barry McDonald. Right. And for Barry to be dealing with depression and a guy that, you know, when I first met, he was the life of the party, right? Gregarious and just so enjoyable to be around. And he still is. But to know that he was going through that, you know, and you knew that, you know, here's a guy that played sports. Here's a guy that, you know, fought through adversity and did so many things and he's still dealing with it. Right. So I think it's important that if it's what you're going through, that you're not embarrassed that there's resources around you and that you don't feel like you can't talk about it. So I'm glad it's a very worthwhile project that you know, the Men's Health Foundation is going through and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Fantastic. And you'll be able to find all those links for the Men's Health Foundation down at the bottom here. So Farhan, thank you so much for joining me today, chatting about your BC high school football career with the Westminster Hyacks. Hopefully one day, maybe you get back on the gridiron and maybe I'm coaching for Barsby and we'll see each other in the Subway Bowl one day.
There you go. Never say never.
There we go.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. So welcome back. I really enjoyed chatting with Farhan today for so many reasons. So I hope that everyone enjoyed that as well. Anyone who played football in British Columbia knows Farhan in one way or the other. So was great to reach out to a lot of people to get information on that article I wrote about Farhan. So you can check that out, of course, at our website at www.sportstalkline.com. So I would have liked to go over some CFL stuff with the Edmonton Elks revealing their new name, but of course we ran out of time and I was not the bit surprised because it was fantastic talking to Farhan and the time just kept going. So he was a busy guy, but he was kind enough to give me about 30 minutes of his time. So really hope that you guys enjoyed that chat. Make sure to tune in to the Sports Talk Line Network for lots of great coverage. We have the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs going on right now. MLB is in full swing and the Euros kick off pretty soon. So you can check all that stuff out on our website and of course on our YouTube channel. So make sure to subscribe to that. So for the Sports Talk Line Network, I have been your host, Joshua Griffith, and this is the Unnamed Sports Show. Make sure to tune in next Thursday at 3 p.m. And remember to love sports, all sports.